Major funding for these broadcasts is made possible by grants from New York Community Bank, Capital One Bank, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns, Terra CRG. Additional support is made possible by AKA Hotels Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, AVR Realty Company, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Citizens Bank, Collins Building Services, Colliers International NYC, Connect One Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Cushman & Wakefield, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Eastern Union Funding, Fisher Brothers, First Nationwide Title Agency, Flushing Bank, Friedman, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investments, Hersha Hospitality, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Madison Realty Capital, Matone Group, Mercantile Commerce Bank, Meridian Capital Group, New Banks, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rosewood Realty Group, SJP Properties, Sterling National Bank, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, The Continuum Company, the Moynihan Group, and these friends.
Trenton, New Jersey. Baseball in Trenton, New Jersey. You know, Catholic school in Trenton, New Jersey. Football, baseball. I'll go to William and Mary, University of Scranton. Who knows? What is this? Okay, I'm going to become a teacher. You got to get out of the Army, become a teacher. I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to go look for a little job over here with this company, a law firm. I don't know. They're not a law firm. I'm going to get to work for a group for 32 years. Citibank, Shearson, Lehman, all of these companies. What is this, a company, Willis? Where is this company out of Chicago, London and Chicago? Now first data processing. I went on a baseball team, a minor league team. I got my father a stadium, Babe Ruth. I got 2 shows over here on the life of Joe Plumeri. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure being here.
Tell me about great-grandfather who came over somewhere in Italy,
Villalba in Sicily.
Right.
My great-grandfather came here in 1890. My grandfather came in 1892.
How old was your grandfather when he came over in 92?
2 years old.
2 years old. How did they decide on Trenton? There was Ellis Island. Some people went to different places. Some people Patterson. Any idea how they ended in?
What happened is that they tended to migrate to places where people had gone from their town. So there were a lot of Villabians, if you want to call them that, who were in Trenton, New Jersey. So that's where they went. And I was growing up, I didn't know that the Villaba Club.
Right, which later on, when your grandfather died, there were thousands of people.
Thousands of people in the Villaba Club, which is where he was laid out.
So what did great-grandpa do initially he was a true entrepreneur?
He was a real entrepreneur. He was actually in the tile business. And he started out as a worker, construction worker.
He wasn't involved with the Roeblings,
Well, he did projects for the Roeblings. Trenton in those days, there's a bridge that says Trenton makes the world takes. And they made ceramics, and Johnny Roebling was there, which built the Golden Gate Bridge.
And also the Brooklyn Bridge.
And the Verrazzano Bridge. And the cable for those bridges was John A. Roebling. And there were beautiful ceramic factories there in Trenton. So he got involved in all that, but at first as a worker, then he became involved in the union at the time locally. So he became a man about town, a mover and a shaker, but still didn't feel that he had reached the potential of really being known for something, which is what brings us to 1927 and the Babe Ruth.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but let's talk about the other side of the family, your mother's side.
My mother's side came from a town not far from Villalba. My grandfather on my mother's side was a worker in the garment district, in the garment factory. And Trenton was also known for a garment industry. So he worked in the garment industry, and my grandmother was simply a housewife. What was interesting is that when I was born, they had already passed away. So I never knew my maternal grandparents.
Let's talk about your grandfather. He felt that baseball could help the city of Trenton. Tell the story.
Well, what happened in 1927, he still felt that he wasn't prominent enough. He still felt that he wanted to be Americanized more than he was. And so he asked people, what is the best way for me to become American? I mean, he was still felt that he hadn't made it yet. And he wanted to be, get to the next level. So people said to me, you want to become an American, you really want to get involved in what America's about, you got to get involved with baseball.
Was he a follower of baseball?
He knew baseball and he liked baseball, but he got more involved the more he found that baseball and America was the way to his dream, which is to become prominent. So he decided to borrow for a couple of hours 10 $100 bills with the idea of getting Babe Ruth's attention when he came out of the clubhouse. So he waited for Babe Ruth.
So he leaves Trenton one day.
And he goes to Yankee Stadium.
And this is right after the Babe hit 60 home runs.
This is toward the end of the season. It's the year Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs, and the same year that Lou Gehrig hits 54 home runs. So it was that year the famous Bronx Bombers were born. So he goes outside and he brandishes 10 $100 bills, which is a lot of money in those days, and he gets Babe Ruth's attention, and he says, what do you got there? And my grandfather tells him, listen, if you come with me, we'll barnstorm, which is to play games with local teams after the season is over.
So how does he meet Babe Ruth?
He just waved the $10 $100 bills, waved the $1,000 in front of him, and basically got his attention, which is how I learned that you got to get out there, you got to play in traffic, you got to do things, you got to get people's attention. And I'm my grandfather's son and my father's son.
Okay, so Grandpa gets the Babe Ruth, and he says to him what?
He says, come with me. And he says, what are you doing with that? He says, I'll give it to you if you come with me in Barnstorm. We'll go on a trip, we'll play town to town, and we'll make a lot of money, doing it. So Babe Ruth agrees. There's another group, I talk about it in my book, The Power of Being Yourself. I talk about it in the book that there's another group that wants to do the same thing with Babe Ruth, but because my grandfather actually went with the money, they beat the other group. There was a newspaper article about that.
And they go to Trenton, right?
There's a picture in the book of my grandfather meeting Babe Ruth at the train station in Trenton to play a game that day. He also, as it turned out, was a premium, talked Lou Gehrig into doing it with him.
So they had a double package.
So you had a double package, all because of this immigrant that spoke broken English, went with 10 $100 bills and got Gehrig and Ruth to play in Trenton, New Jersey. They play the game. Ruth hits 3 home runs. I talk about it in the book. Kids storm the field at the end of the 3rd home run. They have to stop the game, and it becomes one of the epic stories of Trenton. And that's how my grandfather got involved in baseball, how my father got involved in baseball, and ultimately how I got involved in baseball.
Now let's talk about your father. Your father was born in what year?
My father was born 1890.
So when the Babe story, what is he doing at that time?
At that time, my grandfather had started a real estate and an insurance business as an agency, if you will, and my father was working in that business. He was also involved in local sports. with my father. The name of the company was the Joseph J. Plumeri. I call it Plumeri.
At that time,
They called it a different. They called it Plumeri.
Plumeri.
I went to college. My college professor told me it should be pronounced Plumeri, so it was Plumeri ever since, with my father's permission. So it was okay.
So how did Dad meet Mom? Because your
Mom,
mother, was unusual because she got a degree from Rider College.
very unusual, extremely unusual for a woman in those days to have a degree, and she was an established concert pianist at the time also. And they grew up in the same neighborhood, went to high school together, and were high school sweethearts. So they eventually, wed. They got married when they were both 28 years old. And I was the firstborn in the family, so I was going to be a combination of Babe Ruth, Frank Sinatra, or Joe DiMaggio, Frank Sinatra, and Clarence Darrow.
Right, because there's that story that your father taught you later on when you were supposed to be taking the music lessons.
Ah, yes. I was Lily Oris. I was singing lessons. That was the part
That's
of
right.
Frank Sinatra. So I'd go every week to take singing lessons for $2 an hour. And before I went there, I'd stop at the gas station where they had a pinball machine. So I figure I can leverage the $2 and hit the machine because it paid off, and make $5 or $10, and then go give $2 to Lily. And I'd take my singing lessons, and I'd get $8 or whatever. The problem was that I never hit. And every week Lily said to me, well, where's the money? And I said, my father said he'll see you later, which was not unusual in those days because people
Would pay later.
would pay later
Right.
and
You
trusted
go,
everybody.
You go to piano lessons, the same thing.
This grocery store, Mrs. Solomon, my mother will see you later, and everything worked out. So this goes on for about a year. So obviously I owe her $104 or something like that because I never hit, until she runs into my father and she says to him, you owe me $104 or whatever it was. And my father's flabbergasted. He said, I gave him $2 every week. Obviously I got home, and that was a memory that I will never, ever forget. I think my father hit me twice. That was the first time. And then the second time was when I was 16 and had a learner's permit in New Jersey, and I wrecked the car, and that was the second time, and both times were memorable.
So let's talk about growing up. You went to parochial school originally in Trenton.
Right.
And then you had, what did you do during the summers? Work
In
there?
the summers, I had very interesting summers. When I was in grammar school, of course, I played ball. My life was interesting, Michael, in that, and I still do it today. I get up and I have breakfast, I get my glove and my ball, and I go find somebody to play with. I'd go find a game. I'm still doing it today. I get up, I work out, I put my suit on, and I go find a game. Your mentality...
Different game. But
yeah, but it's the same mentality,
Right.
Come play with me.
the Iceman.
Oh, that was high school.
Tell people what the Iceman. I remember.
Well, people forget is before refrigerators, there were ice boxes, and my grandfather referred to them as ice a box. And what you had was a big piece of ice. Some held 25 pounds, some held 50, and you put it into the ice box.
Right, because the construction of the building included an ice box over there.
That's exactly.
As opposed to an air-conditioned event, this was an ice box.
That's right. And so that was what created the cold air that refrigerated everything. So to stay in shape, those days, as you know, Michael, there was no gyms. You didn't lift weights. You didn't do it. So you found other ways to do it. My family, distant cousins, had Plumeri Service company. It was a big truck, and I'd get to the factory at about 4:30 in the morning, and I'd look at the orders for the day. I'd cut the cubes into 25 pounds, 15 pounds. 50, depends upon the size of the box. Chopped ice, I'd put the chopped ice on top of the cables in the bar, and so I was off and running at 6:30 in the morning, and I'd go to the bars, I'd go to people's homes, I'd have the burlap bag, the big tongs, and I walk up the stairs to they were older ladies that had ice boxes, and I'd chip away to get it fit because they didn't fit perfectly, in the box. And it was a heck of a workout. So I'm up from 4:30 till 2:30 in the afternoon. And it turned out to be a great lesson for me. It turned out to be something that I remember how people lived, and I remember the work ethic that I was taught by my cousins by putting me in that business. And I remember those days, and it was just a wonderful experience.
Let's talk about you graduating high school, and you said to me you had an opportunity because you were a football player.
Yes.
To go to University of Scranton,
Yes.
which was a Jesuit school.
Yes.
And what happens?
Well, I went to Trenton Catholic Boys High School, and I had an academic record that was less than auspicious. It wasn't very good. I thought if you were a great football player and baseball player, and you looked like Fonzie, then they would let you into college. Just send a picture. It didn't work out that way. So the only place I got into and got a scholarship was University of Scranton. Not a very well-known school, but interestingly enough, my mother's family came from Scranton, Pennsylvania. And P.J. Carlissimo, a famous name in sports, was the athletic director and a football coach. 2 weeks before I'm supposed to report, and that was one of my first studies in you get adversity happens, don't give up because wonderful things can happen along the way.
Right, you're supposed to start.
What seems bad at the time, don't judge it then, judge it later. So I get a letter saying they dropped football, so I don't know what I'm going to do now. It's the only place that accepted me. And right outside of Trenton was a military school called Bordentown Military Institute. That was a regular boarding school, but also accepted postgraduate students who were athletes, football players, who didn't do well academically, but were good football players.
So you repeated your last year.
So I did my senior year twice. I liked it that much.
But you liked it that much, but you also met a guy by the name of Floyd Little.
I did. And in 1961, people have to remember there was still a great deal of separatism in this country. African Americans didn't go to schools that white people went to, let alone room with them. So I get into school on a scholar, waited on tables, played football, and the first day I get there, they cut my hair, which really aggravated me because I had that cool look going on, and they send me to this room. And I walked in a room, and there's an African-American guy, which meant nothing to me because I came from North Trenton,
right?
Which is Italians and African-Americans and Poles and Puerto Ricans. That was my world.
Right.
So that was fine with me. But he's the only person in the school. And as it turns out, this African-American's Floyd Little, and we played football together. And Trenton wasn't far from Bordentown, so Sundays my father would come and pick us up, and we'd go home. We'd have a traditional Italian meal on Sunday. Floyd would come with me, and we became best friends.
How do you find out about William and Mary? Kids from Trenton didn't know about
Well, what
William.
was funny about this is that William and Mary turns out it's the second oldest college in the United States. The first oldest, if you count that it was a British college. Williamsburg's a pretty town, tourists, really nice, old colonial Williamsburg. So Notre Dame had sent Floyd Little there. No college sent me. As it turned out, when Notre Dame came to visit Floyd to see how he was doing, I'd always say to them, we come as a pair, we're friends, why don't you take me too? Obviously, I was small, and the coach said, Lafayette, Lehigh, and Bucknell never get out of that league, which was kind of depressing. So because we did so well after the season, we were undefeated, college coaches would come and kind of trip over each other to get players from BMI. So my coach says to me, there's a coach from William and Mary, I didn't even know where it was, that wants to come and talk to you and have dinner. So I said, where do I meet him? He said, 7 o'clock, go meet him at He says, in the main hall. So I'm looking around the main hall for a guy that looks like a football coach. And I see somebody with red hair and freckles. And I said, excuse me, are you looking for Joe Plumeri? He said, yes, I am. And I said, well, I'm Joe Plumeri. He said, I'm Lou Holtz. And I get invited.
Legendary coach.
I get invited to William and Mary for a weekend. The only college my parents come to visit with me. They love William and Mary. I can't get in a lot of trouble. My coach tells them that I could actually play there and I get a great education. And of course, I wind up going there. Lou Holtz was my coach for 2 years, but he wasn't the head coach because he was young at the time. My head coach for my last 2 years was Marv Levy, who went on to fame with the Buffalo Bills. So I've been kind of blessed. So the adversity of not getting it, not playing at Scranton because they dropped football, turns into a better college at William and Mary with Lou Holtz.
When you were growing up, and when you were at William and Mary, what did you think you wanted to do?
I had this. I've always been one of these great dreamers. I've always been that way, and I think it's a reflection of my grandfather and my father, who touched a lot of people's lives. And they were always thinking about how they can make an impact on the community, on the people around them.
But now we got this 22-year-old kid, Trenton, Bordentown, Williamsburg.
Right.
Okay, before getting to teaching.
Right.
Family business, entrepreneurs, other things. No idea about Wall Street. No idea about the law, being a lawyer. What were you thinking of doing?
Well, my
besides
father,
playing football and getting married.
Well, my father, it was an interesting. He wasn't sit on the dock of the bay and fish and talk about life. My father was going around town, a pseudo politician, and it was also a city commissioner. So he'd put a suit on me and say, come with me. So I'd watch him speak and I'd see him Toastmaster at dinners. I'd see him being honored. So I had this vision of audiences. I had this vision of a lot of people knowing who I am, this idea of being on stage, because I saw my father, but I took it to the next level. So I never thought of Wall Street, and I never thought of all the things that would happen to me, but I always thought of myself as having an impact on a lot of people. I didn't know specifically what it was, but that was sort of like the broad vision.
So you graduate college, and how do you decide to become a school teacher in Langhorne, Pennsylvania?
I was supposed to, again, adversity, Michael. It's great stories, but they teach. My father had a friend by the name of Arthur Lane. Judge Lane's a federal judge in Trenton. So the plan was I graduate from William and Mary. I get married a week later. I become a bailiff for Judge Lane during the day. I use that money to go to law school at night at Seton Hall, which is in nearby Newark. And that was what I was going to do. But Judge Lane informs me the week I get married that he's lost all his deferments for bailiffs from the Army, and that was the height of Vietnam. So I just got married. I wasn't ready to go into the Army. So I had to find a job. I had no money. I had first month, last month paid, and 85.
I mean, I failed. You were selling Kirby vacuums during the
summer.
Well,
that was in college.
Right, I know.
I was selling Kirby vacuum cleaners, which made me a lot of money because Kirby they were $300 a piece, and I was the lead salesman for selling Kirby vacuum cleaners and because you
gave away the knives, right?
They had phone callers that says if you let Joe Plumeri come in, they'll give you a set of knives and let him demonstrate.
So you teach
right
high school?
I go to Neshaminy High School, and they were looking for a football coach and a history teacher. So I got the job. So I taught history and economics to seniors, and I coached football, basketball, and baseball. And I did that for 2 years while I worked in a men's store, so I could make extra money.
Where was the men's store?
Men's store was in Trenton, and I was making $5,200 and an extra $200 a piece for each sport. So I was making $5,800 a year. I said, I can't do this.
You get accepted to New York law.
Right.
3 months or 6 months into New York law when you said, I got to get a job because classes end at 12 o'clock, and you walk to a place
Yeah,
on Broad Street?
I owe a great deal of gratitude to New York Law School because it's located downtown. So I go to enroll in law school, and obviously now I don't have a job, and I'm law school full time. So I said after, and I found out my last class was over at noon. So I said, let me go walk over to Wall Street, which wasn't far, it was on Worth Street, and find a job at a Wall Street law firm. And then I get a job in the afternoon. I can make money. I can learn the law in the morning, and then in the afternoon, practical. But I didn't know a law firm from anything. And I thought if a company had 3 names, it was a law firm. So I started knocking on doors. And those were the days where you could walk up the elevator with
No
nobody
security,
bothering
right?
you, right? So I saw Carter, Berlind, and Weil. I said, 3 names, got to be a law firm. So I go up 35th floor of 55 Broad Street. I was right almost across the street from the Exchange. And it was the heyday of Wall Street. It was July of 1968, July 8th, 1968. It was the day after my birthday. So I said to the lady at the desk, who could I see about a job? She says, this is a very small place. And she says, let me check. And she makes a call. And she says, go down the hall and make a left and ask for Mr. Weil. I didn't know. It was Carter, Berlind, and Weil, so I think I'm talking to one of the top guys. And he says,
Senior law partner.
Senior law partner. And he said, what can I do for you? I said, well, I'm going to law school in the morning. I'm going to learn the academic part of the law. And in the afternoon, I want to learn the practical part of the law. And I want to start my meteoric rise to the top. He said, well, what makes you think you'd do that here? I said, well, this is a law firm. He says, no, this is a brokerage firm. Now, I was embarrassed, Michael, for 2 reasons. I wasn't sure what a brokerage firm was, and I was obviously in the wrong place. I start to leave. He laughs. He said, no, I like your moxie. He says, why don't I give you a job after school? I said, that'd be great. Give me whatever you want to do. And he takes me down. There was only 2 floors. Takes me down to the floor with the brokers. And he says to the guy who runs the floor, Don Chagrin, who has been my friend for a long time since, he said, give him a spot to work and give him a job doing some things. That's what he said. And so Don says, I don't have a place to put him. So Sandy says, put him in a closet. He says, take the door off the closet, stick a desk in the closet, and half of me was in the closet and half was in the hall, and people would have to walk around me, bump into me.
And this is what, 68?
This is in 1968.
So and it said it was July 8th,
Right.
1968. And when we continue next week on part 2,
Yes.
we'll see what this little job changed your career and your life.
I'm ready for that.
Okay.
Thank you.